So this is my project. I originally started in university and updated it recently. Got a few more updates planned for it. So I think I'll just go through the game a little bit and explain what's going on, and then get to how I've done some of the scripting. So just the main menu here. We've got the basic controls. We've got high scores. Each level's timed. Give the player a little sense of pressure. And if we load into it here, so it's a first-person game, and level 1, the timer's going. We've just got this weapon. So the idea is we start on this first tile here, the green one, and we're looking for a glowing yellow tile. So there's red tiles that have enemies, and there's blue tiles that are pickups, and then there's these black obstacle tiles, which are just a physical obstacle, and we've got the border to the actual grid. So there's a percentage chance that's going to determine how many tiles are spawned, and we'll get into that more later. Yeah, and so we'll go through the level. So we basically just want to explore, pick up extra resources as we can. There's the end tile there, which is lit up. So we don't need the health pickup, so we'll just go on by and get some bullets. Those will be useful later. So part of the decision making I wanted to get across to the player was going for extra resources versus exploring to get to the end of this level, and then mixing in the trying to get the best time along with that. So there's a bit of a sprint, so you can sprint by enemies for a little bit. It works well short lengths. It does take a bit to regenerate, take like a little while to regenerate, and it's only lasts a few seconds. So I don't see any pickup tiles, so if we just try and get to the end of the level here. So the levels are getting bigger, so this time we can't see the end of the level. We've got pickups in multiple directions. So I like this idea of the level expanding and constantly giving the player the choice between do you want to go for fast time, do you want to go for pickups so you have more resources, a bit safer, and just balancing that out. And there's different enemy types, so some enemies are more dangerous than others, some are a bit easier to get by. And then making the decision of do you want to sprint, do you want to try and run to an objective, a pickup that you might need, where you might aggro a bunch of enemies, right? We can sprint, we can get here, but eventually this sprint is going to wear out, and I'm going to have to deal with everything I've run by. So now I can't sprint anymore, and I have to deal with all this. So yeah, that's the general idea. I was going for the gameplay there. So the main menu, just have a main menu script, just on-click buttons. Yeah, pretty straightforward there. So as for the actual gameplay loop, we can open this up. So at the beginning of the game and each level, grid's going to get initialized. So it's going to set the size of the grid that it wants and the difficulty for that level, and that's going to get passed into the grid object. So if we check that out, and it's going to take in that data, and then it's going to create parents for all of the objects it's going to instantiate. And after the first level, it's going to use the saved values that for the player. So if the player is struggling, there might be a bit more health tiles that get spawned. So that gets done, and then it's going to build the grid. And for building the grid, it's going to generate a bunch of tiles, lights, and possibly enemies and pickups. And those are going to get put into a node, and that's going to get stored in the grid. So the grid knows where each tile is. It has an index for that. So there's just a range that's going to be generated by these ints. So 25%, that's the chance of an obstacle tile being spawned. and then health, ammo, and enemy tiles have their own chances. And then there's a max of 5% of the total tiles being a pickup. So it's going to build the grid, and if we check out create common tile, it's what I've got for making the tiles here. So it's going to be a walkable tile, so we'll get to pathing through the grid in a moment. So common tiles are the enemy tiles. So it's there's a few prefabs loaded up, different enemy types. It's gonna randomly pick one of those and place it on that tile and get a light. Then it's gonna store the tile in the node of the grid and assign that node to the grid. So once all the tiles are made and the grid's filled up, it's gonna find a path through that grid. So from the starting point, the green tile, to the glowy end tile, that's gonna make sure that there is a walkable path from the beginning to the end. So the player isn't able to walk across diagonally if there is tile to the right and in front of them. So it only checks forward, back, left, and right instead of using diagonals. And if there is no path, it's going to just find the fastest path from the beginning to the end. And if there happens to be any unwalkable obstacle tiles on that path, it's just going to switch them to a common tile to make sure that there is always a path that the player can take to reach the end of the level. And we can demo this by just massively increasing the number of obstacle tiles. So just fill this up here. So this way we get a ton of obstacle tiles, so it's very unlikely that there would be a path just by default generated. So yeah, we can see it destroyed obstacle tiles here to make sure that there was a path to the end. And I've got, for debugging purposes, a hotkey here. It's going to light up the path to the end. So just take a look here. And we can see we've got a path from the start to the end. If we hit this tile, we can check, and it is the final tile. So if we pump through a few levels here, to where they've started getting a bit bigger, we've got a much bigger tile. We still have tons of obstacle tiles. All of this black represents the obstacle tiles. So we hit the hotkey. Let me take fog off so we can see this effect a bit better. Yeah, so we still have a path from the start tile to the end. So it's cut through all these obstacles, and there is still a path the player can use to reach the end of the level. So other than that, pathfinding, we've got enemies set up. So the enemy is just it's a pack I got off the Unity asset store, and they're going to be generated on each tile. They're using the UFPS system to deal damage to the player. For pathfinding, I've got, because the tiles are being generated each level multiple times throughout the scene, I can't use baked pathfinding, so I've got dynamic pathfinding build area set up here. So all of the navigation is going to be generated at runtime, and all of the enemies are going to use that pathfinding. So if we switch back, get the lighting out of the way here. I think that covers enemies. We'll go to, so there's a light above each tile. I really enjoyed working with lighting. So that was fun. I've also got post-processing set up. And the idea is there's a light that's the same color as the tile over each tile. So there's green light, and that's reflected on the player. So we go into the blue tile, we get a blue light. Go into the red, we get a red light. Then pickups, just UFPS, the health and ammo pickups. And just the UFPS first-person controller to do all of the shooting and the movement. What else? Borders, just borders are gonna resize, rescale depending on the size of the level. I think that just about covers everything. Awesome. Oh, and the camera effects. Yeah, so really trying to get sort of a darker atmosphere going. So we've got the post-processing volume and the settings set up. We've got bloom, color grading. Yeah, just trying to give it this sort of darker atmosphere. And of course, canvas setup for the menu. Okay, awesome. I hope you like the project. If you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and add those in. Thank you.